All right, thanks everybody for being here today. My name is Pete Yango. I am a community engagement specialist with Fort Collins Utilities, and I'll be co-moderating our session today with Tara Mueller. And we're really excited you're here. Eric, next slide. To talk about this important topic. In order to get us going, we're interested in hearing from all of you using the chat. And so across the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a little chat. It says chat and there's a little bubble. Click on that and you'll have access to it. And what we'd like you to do is share your name, your organization, and what is the one tool in the world of irrigation that you just cannot live without. We're interested in knowing that about you. So a little bit of an icebreaker, get to know, understand who you are, and then we'll get right into the content. Is water a tool? Wow, this is getting deep quick.
I was waiting for somebody to say my hands. Well, that's not really what we're talking about, so.
But it's a totally acceptable answer.
Yeah, it makes sense.
As we move along, if anybody has any kind of tech issues, they've got any kind of questions or concerns, you can reach me directly. If it does pertain to the whole group, you're welcome to chat the whole group, but otherwise you can just chat me directly or Tara directly and we'll take care of you. Let's see, what do we got here? We're high tech with design software all the way down to a shovel, just a flathead screwdriver, and how dispensable that is. A little common sense. Thank you for that. I like that.
No channel locks made it, huh?
All right. Feel free to keep adding things to the chat. And I think we get going. Next slide, please. You know, you've all started to get familiar, but just a real quick orientation to Zoom. In the bottom left-hand corner, you've got your audio and visual. Eric, you're the slide guy, right?
Yeah, it's not clicking right yet here. Give me a second. So.
Okay. Well, feel free to stop sharing and reshare if you think that will help. But in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a mute in the video. You see there's an upward facing caret. If you're having trouble with your sound or your video, click on that caret. And what will happen is it'll give you some opportunities to actually troubleshoot that. Or get in touch with Tara or I, and we can help you out best we can. Through the middle, you'll see that there's the opportunity to click on and see who the participants are. Click on the chat, which you've already figured out. And in the top right-hand corner, you've got these view options, and play with that, make it look how you like. And you know, there's an example of what the mobile view looks like. It's a little different, but again, let us know if you have any issues or concerns. Ideally, you're naming yourself so we can know who you are. I think this group's actually done a really good job with that already. Thank you. Keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking, but definitely feel free to speak up or kind of raise your hand or put your questions in the chat. And if you are dialed in, it is a little different if your audio is through your phone. If that's the case, *9 allows you to raise your hand and *6 allows you to unmute yourself. Okay, and we're recording this today because we want to allow others like you to actually see the content and give similar feedback into this process. And we'll talk about the feedback and the process itself in here in just a moment. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Mariel, to get into some content.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I learned something new about Zoom today, so thanks. I wasn't aware of the mobile view and those options. That's great. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. Your input's really important to us as we develop these proposed codes. We want to know what your thoughts are. We want to know what positive impacts, potential negative impacts you see from these proposed codes and try and find ways to mitigate those. And so that's the purpose of the meeting today, is to help inform that code development process for us. So thank you again for your help there. Next slide. As you're probably aware, we've had some irrigation standards that were established back in 2010, but those are for only certain developments. So they're for commercial developments and HOA for large residential developments. So for units of 4 or larger. And so we don't have anything for smaller residential developments. There are no single family or duplex resident or irrigation standards. And so that's what we're looking at trying to create to improve irrigation efficiency, to save water, to save customers and utility bill payers money, to protect consumers from breaks or other potential issues that could occur by not having standards, and also to create resilient landscapes. Next slide. So we've been working on these, and I say we, it's been primarily my colleague Eric Olson have been working on drafting these codes the last few months, and we're here today to talk with you all about what we have so far, and want to get your input. And then we'll be working with building services. They have a building code review committee that's already been assembled, and so we'll take this information that we hear from you today and make any necessary adjustments to that building code review committee for them to weigh in on as well. And that building code review committee is primarily made up of builders in the industry. So there'll be people there that are industry professionals with single family residential development. And then we'll take it to the Water Commission in fall, and then Council will be reviewing and approving these codes prior to 2022, which is the time that they would become effective. Next slide. Got a poll for you. I'm going to turn it over to Pete to set that up, or Tara.
I am launching the poll now.
Awesome. So we want to know what your experience so far with residential irrigation standards is or has been. You see benefits to irrigation standards, no benefits, no experience, lots of options. Find the right fit for yourself or for who you're representing. Looks like we have about 6 respondents so far, waiting for a few more. That might be it. I'm not sure how many people are on.
We have 9.
7 of 9, thank you. Thank you, I just saw that.
I'm gonna end the poll if everyone has had a chance to put their input in.
All right, so the majority, one more than I see many benefits, is I see more benefits than detriments. So these are good. We're happy to see these responses, and hopefully you'll continue to feel that way with these new codes that we're looking at. Next slide.
Let me close this. Perfect. Come on. Yay.
All right, so what are these proposed codes? What types of projects would they apply to? I mentioned small residential developments. More specifically, it's units that are less than 4. And it's for all new developments and new irrigation systems. So The backflow is really what triggers this new code standard and a permit process for new irrigation systems. So if you have an existing home, say it was, built 20, 30 years ago, but it doesn't have an in-ground irrigation system, and so therefore it doesn't have a backflow. If you're getting a backflow and installing that irrigation system, then this code would be triggered. If it's, a bare lot or a lot that's going to be scraped and totally redeveloped, then this code would trigger. And it applies to not only Fort Collins Utilities service area, but the entire GMA, the entire growth management area. So the area that's even outside of the city of Fort Collins boundaries. Next slide. So you're probably wondering, well, what's the permit process? I can understand that would be a concern to some. And so we're still working out some of those details, but where we're at right now is wanting to keep it simple. So Eric's been, and we'll be sharing with you the idea of a hydrozone plan that has some water demand information on there, and then a standards checklist that just identifies that and indicates that you will do the installation and do all the things in accordance with the standards, and then an inspection afterwards. So we're trying to keep it simple. And we are playing around with this option of attending an annual training. If a certain irrigation company or group who's doing the installation were to attend the annual training, they would receive streamlined process. And we don't really know those details yet, but that's one option we're kind of playing around with. I think that's my last slide, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Eric Olson, who is going to give you some more details on what these proposed standards look like.
Thank you, Mariel. And first and foremost, I do want to thank Mariel. I want to thank Rich. I want to thank Pete, everybody that's assisted in this process. This is a very lengthy process that we're trying to get through, and a lot of details that really complement it. Help me out in the long run. So I can't thank the support of the people that we have and the colleagues that I work with every day. So I just can't thank you guys enough. Now back to the landscapers and the irrigation professionals and the irrigation designers we have online. This is a great opportunity for all of you involved to be part of our residential irrigation codes as we move forward. I can't stress the importance and just how much I appreciate your attendance here today, because without your feedback, we might miss a couple details that might be pretty important. So hopefully as we go along into the irrigation design, irrigation materials, and the irrigation controls, we will start to see, you'll start to see where we're going and what we're trying to do, and how we're trying to create these standards to support our future. Living in the state of Colorado, we are water stewards. We have, I think, 8 states relying on the water that comes down from our mountains. And that means that we have responsibilities, and that's part of what this is. So I'm going to run through the standards. I did send you guys the standards on Monday. And if you need another copy, of course, feel free to shoot me an email. If you'd like to discuss these offline, if you have some concerns or some considerations that you might want to plop into the plan, let me know. I'm willing. We open ears and really excited about this process. So as I review these, we're going to go through the irrigation design. That's going to touch on the velocities, water velocities of it, how we want to see these things hydrozoned, hardscaping, the details in there. Then we break into another section called irrigation materials. That's going to be about what kind of pipe we want to see in the ground, what kind of componentry associated with the irrigation system, valves, PRS check valve, or PRS heads with check valves, of course. And then the third section, short and sweet, is the irrigation control. And that's going to be smart controllers, of course, rain sensors, silicone-filled wire nuts, believe it or not, to be put in the ground. We really want to see kind of the consumers protected with a sound irrigation system that's going to last and be efficient into the future. So irrigation design, I'm not going to read these word for word, but we want to see an irrigation plan. It can be a very simple irrigation plan with a north arrow and an irrigation legend. That's really all we want to see. We want to see where the point of connection is, where the backflow sits, where the valve locations are plotted out. That's really all the irrigation plan needs to carry on it. A hydrozone map is really important. We all know about hydrozones. Specific water needs per the area. We also want to try to figure out what the total annual water use is for this project, for this lot. If you know the commercial code, we allow 15 gallons per square foot, and that's across the entire site. So you can have your Kentucky bluegrass, but you're going to have some low water plants in order to balance that all off. But it seems to work very well in the commercial world, so I think it's very applicable in the residential world. And so we want to pay attention to those hydrozones. We want to make sure that the landscape area, soil conditions are being amended, that our solar exposures to the zones are done separately. Everything is kind of detailed, kind of what you guys do already. And that's really important about that. So the next one, water velocity. Of course, this is a standard thing in irrigation design. We don't want to see the water velocity exceed 5 feet per second. Here's one that I've put into here, and I've heard positive and negative on it, and that's a master valve. Master valves are very, very crucial and a very key element in the commercial world because we have lengthy main lines that tend to travel across parking lots into islands and thereabouts. And the residential world, are we considering a master valve for that? I put it in here and I'd love some feedback on that. More about the design, main lines and valve boxes. Can't tell you how many times I've seen a main line a couple of feet away from the foundation of the home break, end up flooding the basement. If it would have just been a couple feet buffer away from that foundation, probably wouldn't have had that issue or that problem. So that's one thing I think we're addressing in there. Of course, turf and non-turf areas need to be on separate zones. We don't want to see any spacing done beyond what the manufacturer publishes in their books. So that's irrigation design. Moving into irrigation materials, more irrigation design. Sprinkler heads shall be installed no less than 3 inches from sidewalks, driveways, hardscapes, and edging. This is something that I've just learned after years and years of irrigation maintenance, how affected those heads can be from, say, a drip bed, or say a rock bed with the edging leaning right onto that head. Now that head has to be moved. That head's not going to effectively cover the area. The coverage will be compromised. One thing also to consider there is to understand that we want to see drips done separately, drips by themselves, micro sprays by themselves, or if you're trying to use, say, a rotary zone to cover some dense plant material, we'd want to see that by itself. We'd like to not have any of those combined in the same zone. All right, so we got our first design standards question coming up here for our poll. Pete? So you've got a little taste about it. What do you think the proposed irrigation design criteria standards look like so far? Do you think it'll be difficult to meet these standards? Do you think it'll be challenging, feasible piece of cake, or not sure about that situation? So if you'd please just take a couple minutes, give us your opinion on how you see these irrigation codes affecting your business.
I think everyone has participated, Eric.
Thank you, Tara. All right, it looks good here. Looks like we've got the outlines of design. The majority says they would be feasible. A couple would be challenging. I would love to hear from those participants of what the challenging part is, maybe after or maybe in that breakout room. So please make some notes on your thoughts to where you can make sure that we can get your information. Scrolling down a little bit, the irrigation design, again, we see more benefits than detriments, and that's encouraging. That's great to see, because this is all about saving the water and making sure that we can move on into the future. And here's one that I'm just really excited about. Do you feel master valves should be a requirement for the residential irrigation system? And it looks like we've got a hot button topic for that one. No, and that's what's winning so far in that category out of 7 votes. So I'm going to close that poll, and we're going to move on to the next section. If I can get my clicker to work here, we'll see. There we go, irrigation materials. So I appreciate your patience with these technical issues we might be experiencing though, but this is more of the componentry that we're going to see to construct the irrigation system. And main lines shall be constructed at a minimum of Schedule 200 class PVC with solvent welded joints. That's kind of what we do out there in the field. One thing we've added to the commercial world recently was to have turf valves with flow control, and that's something we'd like to see on the residential side as well. It's an effective way to shut those valves down if they get stuck, or to control high pressure or high flow situations in that area. 4-inch pop-up riser height, I think everybody's on board with that. I know a lot of people have switched to 6-inch heads. And then we want to make sure, of course, since we are a water sense state right now, that these heads have pressure reducing technology, which is now the law. And of course, with residential, we'd like to see check valves done as well. So more on irrigation materials. As you know, in the commercial world, spray heads, we don't want to see van nozzles, just the standard vans when we see applications of 90, 180, and 360 degrees. I think we've all tested vans enough with catch cans and understand that they don't perform as well as they should. They don't perform even close to what a fixed nozzle does. And so we really don't want to see, though, you know, we don't want to build a beautiful irrigation system and then foul it at the very end by putting on a nozzle that doesn't perform that well at all. Or I could just say it performs one of the poorest, performance of all the nozzles that we have. So we don't want to see that. That's one thing we're going to be keeping an eye on. Pressure reduction and Y screen on all the drip zones, that's commonplace. And then pressure reducing or pressure compensating emitters. Although we have pressure reduction on the drip zone itself, we still want to see pressure compensating emitters out there just to assure that we have that consistent application of water in the drip system. All right, polling question number 2 or 3. How do you think the outline proposal of irrigation materials will affect you? Challenging, very challenging, feasible, or easy? And if you could please just take a couple minutes and give us your thoughts on this, that would be great.
And Eric, it looks like everyone has voted.
I agree. Thank you, Tara, so much. Again, this is encouraging to see. It's encouraging that you guys think that this can be accomplished. Easy is the leader, of course. Feasible, very exciting to me. Really excited to see that we see more benefits than detriments. Exciting news, because this is something I really want to push forward. And I'm excited to put this under in Fort Collins as having residential irrigation standards. So trying to get my mouse to work here, and I will move on to the next slide. There we go. And just a little bit of news. We do have some hot stuff in the hopper about how we're going to start testing irrigation controllers in the future. There's a testing center being established here in the east side of Fort Collins. I'll have more information about that. But in the irrigation control, since this is a residential world, we do want to see WaterSense labeled smart controllers. That is how our rebate program works. We've implemented that on the commercial side as well. For what we want to see on those commercial properties is a WaterSense labeled smart controller. We want to have a functional rain sensor, and I know that's kind of a funny story, but you know, we've seen rain sensors under trees, we've seen rain sensors under the eaves of buildings. We want to actually see these rain sensors out where they're going to receive the weather and do what they should do, and that's shut the system down when there are situations of rain. Of course, Underwriter Laboratories expectations of how we see that wire going out to the valves from the controller, and we want to see, like I said earlier, electrical splices made with waterproof and certified wire splice connections. We don't want to see an old 16-cent wire nut with a daub of 7-Eleven glue inside of there. That to me is not an electrical connection that we would support under a Underwriters Laboratories. So simple stipple stuff on irrigation control. If you have any ideas for some of these too, this is what we're going to do in the breakout rooms. We're going to discuss these 3 sections that we've just introduced, and hopefully you've got some comments or some actual exceptions or something, or some feelings that you want to interject and give us some insight on what you think about these standards. So here's polling question number 4.
The poll should be up.
The poll is up. People are clicking away, so we should be good, Tara. Got 4 out of 8 so far, so somebody joined us a little late, it looks like, or who knows, somebody jumped off a little early. Well, good. And again, don't forget that what we're trying to do is flush out information with this meeting. And so when I look down here and I see one of our participants sees some detriments more than benefits, I would love to carry that conversation on further. So shoot me an email or let's discuss this in the breakout rooms as we're ready to go into there and kind of review what we just discussed. So Tara, I think we're ready to close that poll out and move into the next slides here. Oh, the joys, come on. There we go. Okay. Small group discussions. Now we're going to go into some breakout rooms, and we're just going to really talk about what I just poorly read to you guys. Really want your feedback on any of those bullet points or any of those details you have a thought about or an opinion, or maybe when you read it or you heard me reading it, it struck an idea up in your mind. This is how we make good codes. This is how we create standards that are vetted and people feel good about, as opposed to just not bringing you guys in. So your opinion is crucial. Pete, are you going to step in and help me understand this breakout room science? Or Tara, excuse me.
Yeah, it's more of an art than a science, actually. And so I've worked to break you all out. We're going to have 3 or 4 participants in each room, and in each room, there'll be a facilitator and a note taker. What we're going to do is we're going to move through what's called a Jamboard, which is basically a whiteboard where you can add sticky notes and you can share your thoughts. And so we're going to go through this process of some individual time so that you can get your ideas up. space to discuss for each of those 3 topics that Eric went through. Then we're all going to get back together and have time and space to have a group discussion, a large group discussion across the 2 breakouts. Let's see, I'll stick the Jamboard link in the chat. Facilitators, keep it handy, just in case the chat is accessible in a different way and people need it again. But go ahead and click on that link at this point. And we're going to give you a chance to start playing around in there. I see people jumping in. Eric, next just populate the animation.
Okay.
And so here's the toolbar that you see appearing on the left of the Jamboard. Populate the animation again, Eric. And really, we're just going to be using that one, the sticky note. That's the one that we're focusing on today. And it's really self-explanatory. You click on it, it opens up a bubble and gives you a chance to just jot in a sticky note. Really simple. There are other options in there, but you really don't have to worry about it. And then when we break out, the facilitator and note taker, they're going to make sure that you're on the right slides, and we'll go from there. So play around, and there'll be time to play around with it when you're in your breakout group. Play around with that Jamboard. And staff, anything else before I actually break us out? Any other additional thoughts?
What do I do, Pete? Do I stop screen sharing, or do you put me into a room? How do I work into this?
Yeah, I'll stick you in a room. The screen sharing is going to stop automatically.
Okay.
Facilitators, feel free to share your screen. I think that can be beneficial in case a participant is having trouble accessing the Jamboard. That's another good point. If you're having trouble with the Jamboard or the tech is just screwy, you could verbalize your thoughts, and staff or note taker will just put it on a sticky note, or you can put it in the chat. Same thing. We'll get it in there for you. Make sure your voice is captured. All right. All right. With that, we're going to break out.
Like streamlining that process is really good.
Okay. Cool. Well, one of the things we're going to do is encourage everybody to share this recording, and just a quick survey that will be encouraging feedback, basically the same feedback that you just contributed. And so we're hoping to make this conversation more accessible than just the people that were able to be here today. There's everybody. Welcome back. welcome back. I hope you had a great conversation. Eric, please share the presentation again. That would be awesome.
Will do.
What we're going to do now is representation from each group. You could crowdsource it, you could group source it, or if you assign someone to actually report out, either way. Eric, we're going to be on slide 26. Really what we want to do is hear from each group. What are your, highest level takeaways from the discussion? So that the point of this part is to take 2 minutes to do that. What are the highest level takeaways? What's 1 or 2 takeaways? Both groups do it so that we can now have a larger group discussion. And maybe there's some things that rise to the top as far as like the direction we go for this larger group discussion. And then we're able to kind of bring all of the thinking together in this one group. So that's where we're at. That's what we want to do. Then we can just have free discussion around that. Then we'll have only a couple minutes left and we'll wrap. So, facilitators, how are you going to play it from your group?
I can share out, Pete. One of the bigger comments, that I think Eric kind of expected was about master valves and the conversation there. So there were lots of thoughts about master valves, especially as it relates to a main line that is not very extensive, and whether master valves and or something like a flow sensor it is maybe overkill in a situation where the master valve is just a few feet long. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And then we had some other, just really great suggestions for maybe clarifying some of the language or simplifying some of the language, things like that. But I think, we had a big focus on master valves, and I encourage anybody who is in our group to speak up and make sure you mention something that, if there's something you want to discuss with the larger group. I think that's totally acceptable here.
Awesome, Katie. Yeah. Anything anybody else wants to share that could contribute to a larger discussion?
One of our group members had a concern over the class 200 when they're using material poly that is rated for 100 PSI. So part of the thought was maybe we just make sure that the material is rated for constant pressure and not just say PVC is the only material allowed. I think that may have been Bob. I don't know if I captured that correctly, Bob.
Nope, wasn't me. I believe it was Chris.
There you go.
Yeah, that was me, Rich.
Sorry.
Yeah, we've used that on occasion, especially in residential applications where we do use, double gear clamps or things like that. But if the main line is 50 feet long and you're using 100 PSI poly, we've never really had an issue with that. I was just curious as to if there was anybody else that did have issues with that particular type of pipe. So
Chris, is that the green strike?
Yeah, it's the 100 PSI. We used to buy it. The whole pipe was green, and it was great because it was an identifier in the ground that was the versus the lateral. And now I think it's become really difficult to find the actual solid green pipe, and it's just green stripe. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna encourage us to hear from the other group, and then maybe this is the conversation we have. It'll be a free discussion. But the other group, in just a couple minutes, let us know what you talked about and what emerged and what might contribute to a larger discussion. Who's our other facilitator? We'll start with you.
It was Rich, Pete. So we've I think both of the
I hadn't realized that was Rich. That was your report out. I thought you were latching on to what Katie was saying.
We had a lot of good discussions. There's a lot of good Post-it notes in there. a lot of positives, a lot of direction. So yes.
Okay.
One thing I might add, I was in the group with Rich and the rest. I think it was both Bob and Jason, but it sounds like it's pretty universal for our group that emphasizing education, public education on all of these things that we're talking about today, and the issues and benefits and best practices was really emphasized. With, I think there were even some exclamation marks requested at the end of the education.
Can we expand on that a little bit more, Mariel? I know we don't have a lot of time, but so does that mean, I mean, to me, these standards will create the education. And so is that kind of part of the package? Because with standards, there's usually justification and reasoning for why these standards are established. Am I on the same path?
I think you are. I don't want to, I mean, I have my own kind of assumptions about how education could be paired with these code changes, but maybe if Jason or Bob or someone else wants to provide their kind of thoughts on that, that might be more fruitful for the discussion. So I don't misinterpret the ideas there.
Yeah, so as far as where I was going, this is Jason. It was said in our group, like the terminology, we all understand that, but when you get into hydrozones and things like that, the normal person might not understand what that means. And so, yes, I think what you're saying, Eric, that it does bring it up, but there kind of needs to be a follow-up behind it to help explain why. Most people, they don't get or care what the pressure regulating heads do. They see that mist, they think water's good, water's going everywhere. And it's like, you're right, water is going everywhere. That's the problem here. And it's not their world, so they don't know, or, they've never had to think much about it, I guess.
Thank you, Jason.
That, Eric, starting with the head's perfect example. They used to, repair a head and the head's $5. Now it's 15. And people, they just don't understand what that's about. So you're on the right path, but I just think it's going to take a little more education. I don't know how you do it if people don't reach out to learn.
One thing we talked about was like the big box stores selling inferior products and whatnot. So maybe it could turn into something that you kind of start there, because that seems to be the face to the public on a lot of things. And you've got these people that don't know what they're talking about trying to educate people. And so maybe you could wrap them up a little more and trying to educate them as a leading voice to this stuff. Maybe, I don't know. That's a tricky one.
Well, I can see myself next spring in 2020 setting up a table at Home Depot. And I used to do this in the old days, and then bring my pipe cutters, bring some poly pipe, bring some drip pipe, and just stand there. And people walk by me and I'm like, hey, you want to learn how to crimp a fitting? You want to learn how to do this? You want to learn how why this is called an insert fitting and this is compression? And I think that's part of the outreach that we'll start to do next spring, I hope. But we'll see. But great comments, guys. This is what I need. So.
Well, we've got a few more minutes. If anything else wants to rise up for conversation from the small groups, could be anything, any question, any thought. And in about 5 minutes, we'll get to wrap. Or we wrap a little early if folks don't have anything that they're kind of looking to bring to the group. So what other thoughts or comments or thinking do you have?
Hey, I just, this is Tim here with the irrigation engineers. I just wanted to bring up when I came back from the split groups early, that one of the things I think is really important, Eric, is to get the contractors on board. Make it really easy. If they've got the design, like maybe you review the first one or two after they've taken the class, and then like you said, it's easy for them to get a design and done. This does not need CAD. This does not need a professional designer. Like, you know, it's all 1-inch pipe or 3/4 inch. And, you know, along with that comment that review times are 6 weeks, that would be too long. And to streamline it as much as possible, I think is a really good idea. That's all.
Great comment. And I agree that we can't have that in the residential world because the residents won't, you know, when you're building a development, when you're coming in with acres and acres of houses and community centers and such like that, there's one expectation. But when you're talking about a single family residence, yeah, we don't have that. You're right. We have to be able to expedite this process.
So Tim came back from the breakout a little early and I asked him the question, do you know anybody else that might have an opinion about some of the things we're talking about today? And he said, well, yeah, of course, that's the world I live in. And so I think that might be the case for some of you as well. What we're planning on doing is packaging this recording with a simple survey that gets at the same type of feedback that you provided in the breakout sessions and in the polls, and having that and sharing it out. And so hopefully others that aren't here are able to provide input into this process too. And so I think you play an important role in us being able to like get that to more people. So if you know anybody that might have an opinion about some of these things, please, when that briefing comes out and that group memory that shares the notes from today in the recording and the survey, please share it to folks that you think would have something to say.
I think one other thing to add on to that would be time of year. If you were to do this again in the off season, you might get more people that were able to attend and do that. Middle of July, it's very select few that can actually pull away to, you know, lose a couple hours in the morning. Not lose hours. This is a very great thing. I don't mean it to come across like that, but I think you all know what I mean.
Yeah, no, your point's taken. Thanks for just saying that. Yeah, everybody seems to kind of know that and feel that on some level, but thanks for just calling it out.
Yeah, and thank all of you for participating. This is, without you, we really, we would be just left on afloat. So appreciate your feedback. This has really been a positive meeting, and I'm glad that we were able to get all this stuff. So thank you.
So Eric, advance a couple slides, and now's your chance to wrap up. Mariel, Abby, whoever wants to contribute to the wrap up.
All right, well, like Pete said, we're going to share the recorded presentation and the results of the Jamboard. I don't know if we'll post those on maybe a website, maybe the COP website, I don't know. But we will send those out to you and let you know where those will live. We are going to take some of the feedback and update the codes list, and then I might send that Word document, that PDF with the 3 sections back out. Just for a little check and balance from you guys. Then like Mario listed earlier, that we're going to bring it to the boards and commissions in the fall. And then, you know, count my blessings. And for my birthday present in November, hopefully council will adopt this and we can implement it in January of 2022. Again, any thoughts, anybody that you work with that might have some input, create this into the conversation. And if they give you anything that's a worthy feedback or a comment, get it to me, you know, send me an email or give me a call. Everybody here is pretty much on my speed dial. Your feedback is crucial. So I can't thank you enough for participating and giving me the hour and a half out of your busy weeks. Jason, on your comment, A handful of people could not make it because they were just too busy today. And so I am going to reach out to them after this and make sure that they're aware of what's going on as well. So.
Eric, if I can, I just wanted to qualify some of the boards and commissions and council dates that I have listed there. So I don't think we mentioned at the beginning, but this is a very small part of a much larger building code, plumbing code update process that happens every 3 years. So there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that are happening in the different portions or sections of codes. And so these dates are somewhat fluid, but the goal is kind of fourth quarter of 2021. So just wanted to let people know it might not be November, it might be October that it goes to council. It just kind of depends on what's happening with the larger body of codes that are being updated. Did I capture that accurately, Rich?
I believe so.
Okay.
Thank you, Mariel.
And that's why it's happening now in the middle of July, even though it's not the best time for industry professionals, but there is a reason, I guess. It's worth noting. All right. I'm going to launch, or Tara's going to launch a process poll. It just lets us know how this was for you. It's anonymous, just like all the other polls were. We'd appreciate if you'd complete that. And then thank you for your time and have a great day.
Thank you so much, everyone. Great discussion.